Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an author who really splits the horror community right down the middle, John Langan. He's an academic, an award winner, and a writer whose books inspire, well, both passionate devotion and some pretty intense frustration, sometimes from the very same reader. Take his 2016 novel, The Fisherman. It got absolutely stellar reviews. This one from Tor.com calls it deliberate, elegant, and beautifully written. Critics were basically hailing it as a masterpiece, a new high watermark for what horror can do. But then you look at the readers and oh man, it's a completely different story. If you hop into any online discussion, you'll see it right away. It's like there are only two camps. This is a profound masterpiece, and this is overblown drivel. There's almost no in between. It's wild. So what's the deal? Who is this author that gets such a strong, divided reaction? Well, that's what we're going to figure out today. We'll unpack what makes his writing so unique, why people react so strongly, and give you a little guide on what to expect if you're thinking of picking up one of his books. Okay, first things first, who is John Langan? See, to really get his writing style, you have to understand his background. He's not just a horror author. He's also a professor who teaches creative writing and Gothic fiction. And that academic side of him, it shapes everything he writes. And as you can see here, Langan is no overnight sensation. Not at all. He's a real craftsman who's been steadily building this amazing career for, 2 decades now? He started with collections and novels, even edited anthologies, just honing his voice. And it all paid off in 2016 when he won the Bram Stoker Award for The Fisherman. That's basically the top literary award in horror. All right, so let's get into what makes his style so distinct. When people say a story is Langan-esque, what do they actually mean? Let's break it down. Okay, so at the very heart of Langan's work is this constant tug of war between literary fiction and genre fiction. He even said it himself about his first novel. The genre people weren't happy with all the literary stuff, the literary people weren't happy with all the genre stuff. He just lives right in that messy middle, blending these deep character studies with some truly terrifying supernatural horror. And that brings us to his home turf, weird fiction. Now this isn't your typical horror. We're not talking about jump scares or slashers. Weird fiction is all about cosmic dread. It's this deep, unsettling feeling that our reality, it's just a thin veil. And behind that veil is something so much bigger, older, and more incomprehensible than any simple monster. He also loves detail. A lot of detail. I love this quote from him. "I'm a putter-inner, not a taker-outer." And he means it. He leans hard into complexity, building these incredibly rich, dense worlds with tons of backstory. He's really asking you, the reader, to be patient and stick with him, even when the story takes some very long detours. And that leads us to his most famous and, most controversial technique, the story within a story. You've probably heard about this. It works like this. You're in the main story, the tension is building, and then suddenly everything stops. A character sits down and starts telling another story, a really long one. But in weird fiction, this isn't just a detour. Think of it like peeling an onion. Each story is a layer, and as you peel it back, you get closer to a deeper, more terrifying truth. It's his most powerful tool, for sure, but it's also what trips up a lot of readers. So let's look at how all this stuff actually works in practice. And there's no better example than his most famous book, The Fisherman. This thing is the perfect case study. It's got grief, folklore, and, you guessed it, a very, very long story within a story. So the book starts out as this really beautiful, kind of sad story about two guys, Abe and Dan. They're both widowers, and they bond over their grief by going fishing. It's their therapy. But then they hear about this mysterious place called Dutchman's Creek, and local legend says it might just be able to bring back the dead, but at a terrible price. And that's where things get spooky. And this is the moment. This is where the readers divide. The book takes a hard left turn into that story within a story. It's this massive historical tale about curses and dark magic, and it takes up nearly half the book. For some readers, like this person on Goodreads, it just kills the momentum dead. They were invested in Abe and Dan, and suddenly they're in a whole different story. But then you've got the other camp. For them, that deep dive is the whole point. They'd say this nested story is what makes the book a masterpiece. It's what gives the horror this immense, ancient, epic scale. It's not a detour at all. It's the foundation the whole thing is built on. So readers are totally split. But you know who wasn't? The literary world. In 2016, The Fisherman took home the Bram Stoker Award. That's the biggest prize in horror. So it cemented its place as a modern classic and kind of proved that Langan's challenging style, it has a massive, rewarding payoff if you stick with it. Okay, but what if all this talk of 100-page nested stories sounds a little intimidating? Well, don't worry, because Langan isn't just a novelist. He's an absolute master of the short story, and honestly, it can be a much more direct and sometimes even more intense way to get a feel for his work. His story collections are just incredible, and you have to love the subtitles, right? Like, "and other monstrous geographies." They give you a really concentrated dose of his style. You'll get everything from a spec ops team fighting vampires in Iraq to some ancient evil waking up in the woods of New York. A lot of people say these powerful, self-contained stories are actually the best way to get into his world. Okay, so let's put it all together. Why should you read John Langan, and where's the best place to start? Here's your guide. Here's the bottom line. John Langan is a huge voice in modern horror because he trusts you, the reader. He writes these dense, rewarding stories that stick with you because they don't give you easy answers. He's amazing at connecting really human emotions, especially grief, with this huge cosmic horror. So here's my advice. If you're ready for the full deep dive experience, go for The Fisherman. But if you want a quicker, more direct taste of what he's all about, his collection, The Wide Carnivorous Sky, is the perfect place to start. And I think this quote really sums up his whole philosophy. He calls horror a big tent, meaning there's room for everything, from super literary stuff to fun pulp horror. He doesn't see himself as some outsider trying to fix the genre. No, he's right there in the tent with everyone else. He's just pushing on the walls, seeing how far they can stretch to hold all this literary depth and cosmic dread.
So, in the end, Langan's work leaves you with a really unsettling question. What if our own deepest grief, our personal tragedies, aren't just ours? What if they're a mirror, reflecting a much older, darker, and hungrier reality that's been waiting just under the surface all along? That's the question he asks. And the answer? Well, he leaves that for you to think about.